Well, one of the things I was thinking about is just the importance of coming alongside your kids in this area and coaching them with the right perspective. For myself, I find that, I want my kids to be well respected and I want them to look good. And so that can be a sinful motivation that comes into this. Or if I get embarrassed if they don't look people in the eye. But thinking a little bit more broadly, what does God want for my children and how does he want to use them in his kingdom? And then how can I communicate that vision? Children, we are people who love others. Jesus, as we said, has come from heaven to love us, to bring his truth to us. That's exactly what we're here for. This is the great commission that he's given us. So that's the vision. And not only that, children, but man, the way you communicate is going to be so important for your success in life.
Yes.
If you walk with the wise, you will be wise. And so communicating that positive, big picture vision of how being others focused glorifies God and how it will be a blessing to their own life.
Welcome, friends, to the Generations broadcast. Kevin Swanson with you today. Another segment of Discipleship for Dads. And we've got three dads in studio with us, Todd Strasser, Danny Craig, and yours truly, Kevin Swanson. And today we want to get to the question of what about socialization? Right. It's a typical question that was asked of homeschoolers for the last 48 years, whatever it was. What about socialization? But really, to get to the positive, raising socially and relationally mature children and how to get our kids to walk with the wise, which is an important proverb. Yes. So the big question, what about socialization? I received that question probably the first time when I had graduated from my homeschool in 1981, and I was student body president of a major West Coast university. Someone said, "You were homeschooled. What about socialization?"
My thinking on this.
I said, what about socialization? What is it?
Yeah.
And that was, I think, my first question. Because, I had interacted with a lot of different groups on campus and I was elected as student body president of this large school. And they're asking me about socialization. So I'm thinking, what is socialization? So what is it? We need to define that. Now, it has to be defined biblically.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, socialization has got to be to love one another and to love people who don't think and act just like you. So I think that's it. That's probably the best definition I come up with, but you go.
I was thinking that my thinking on this has changed over time. I remember one of the first times that we kind of got asked this question as a family, and we sort of like, well, here are the different ways that homeschooling actually helps you relate to other people socially. And then as I thought about it more over the years, I was thinking, well, actually socialization is the reason that I don't want my kids in public school. And now I'm kind of thinking, you know what, just scrap the word socialization because it's really rooted in modern psychology and it's this whole idea of defining kids by helping them integrate into society with, worldly relationships. So let's just get rid of that word and do something that's a little more biblical, like loving one another.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. That's the core.
Yeah. It's an interesting idea. I'm not going to homeschool my children so that they're socialized, but we have to go back to the Word of God, like you're saying. Well, what is the concept there that we're so afraid of missing in socialization? I think it's love. I think it's preferring one another, honoring one another, serving others.
That's right.
Showing that love of Christ to others and not being self-focused. Because sometimes, the kind of introverted heart can be a little, I'm not worried about other people, I'm focused on me, and that's not good. So I think that, just get a better description of what we're talking about here.
There are two aspects. One is that, what about socialization? Meaning, what about socialism? What about socialism? I mean, you're supposed to be plugged into the socialist state.
Yeah.
How's that going to happen if you're not attending socialist schools? So that was one aspect.
Yeah.
And then another aspect was, the self-centered, isolating thing, which can happen in the homeschool as well as the public school. So we get that. But also the idea of the individual in an age-segregated classroom in which they would interact only with kids at their age group or with kids who think and act just like them in their ethnic group and their little age group in which, you can't interact with anybody who you can't relate to very well. And now I usually bring out this is that, they're going to grow up and one day they're going to get their first job at McDonald's. They'll walk in and they'll say, I only interact with people who think and act just like me, my peer group. So I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be working with a 59-year-old Hispanic grandmother. That's not happening for me. I can't do this. What is the manager going to say at that point? He's going to say, well, we've got one opening for you, and close it gently as you leave. When you get out into the world, you interact in church, you interact in a business, you have to be able to interact with adults, with older people, with younger people, you can't just be focused on your peer group in which, you have this very narrow set of interests in which you sort of get along. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and not only that, as you get out into the world, not only is this ability to relate with all kinds of people so significant for a person's material success, Jesus says in John 13:35, when you're out in the world, by this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another.
That's it. And we teach that first in the home. And that's why, how do you teach a child to get along with others and to be mannerly and to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And the answer to that is, well, moms and dads, that's a full-time job for like 18 years. Yes. And we start, put two 2-year-olds in a room for 2 minutes with one toy, and everybody outside gazing through the glass window. Okay, just do an experiment like this. Okay, two 2-year-olds in a room for 2 minutes with one toy.
It sounds like you've done this experiment recently,
Well, it's really interesting. It's a socialization experiment. Within 2 minutes, there's some screaming going on. There's some yelling. There's hitting. There's a socialization opportunity for every parent. Mm-hmm. It's a full-time job for your wife. I mean, every day we've got a couple of grandkids around, and they're at 2, 3, 4, 5 years of age.
I think
there's a lot of yelling going.
Yes,
you relate to
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
One important thing to say about this right at the outset, especially for homeschool families, is this has got to be near the very top of your priorities in terms of your discipleship for your children.
Big time.
Way bigger than math, way bigger than like a lot of academic subjects, the ability to relate to others with love. Todd, how have you guys prioritized this?
Yeah, I think there is a thought, particularly I think if for parents that find themselves more introverted. I don't really like all the personality labels, but I think just like we disciple in all kinds of different categories, we have to be intentional in this too, because I think there's actually a gospel connection about what Christ did. I was thinking of in Galatians, we've been called to liberty. We don't use the liberty as an opportunity for the flesh or for ourselves, but actually we use that to love one and serve one another. And so this is an important part to serve and love people. You have to be able to go talk to them. I mean, to some degree, you can do maybe some service and love from a distance, but I mean, God is just inherently saying you're going to have to walk up to people and be able to interact with them of all different ages, not just your peer group of old, young, all kinds of people, because we're called to be servants of all.
Well, Hebrews 13 says, love the brother, love the strangers, right?
Yes.
Philadelphia and also philoxenia.
Yeah, the hospitality.
So we're to do the both, and to love the strangers is key. And you used a text at the outset of this off air where Jesus came to interact with strangers and to bring down middle walls of partition and all the rest.
Yeah.
But here's the point. We cross the road to meet the new neighbor. He crossed the universe to meet with us. Yeah. And so you talk about getting beyond your comfort zone. And Jesus crossed the universe.
Let's just be honest. Whether or not you're an introvert or an extrovert, everybody in a certain context is going to have to get out of their comfort zone.
But that's an excuse people use.
Yeah, nobody is.
I'm an introvert here. We're an introverted family. We just stick to ourselves. How do you respond to that?
Well, nobody is naturally loving. Let's just be honest.
That's true. Yeah.
Let's just be honest about that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's naturally loving. I'm not naturally loving. Some people would classify me as an extrovert, but we all have contexts in which we're relatively more or less comfortable. Mm-hmm. But we can't let that define our ability to do those two things, love the brothers and love the strangers.
Here's how I would respond to that. We are to be hospitable. Mm-hmm. And hospitality is the love of the stranger.
That's right.
So, in fact, the word actually praises those who are given to hospitality. You're given to it. You want to do this. You want opportunities to do it. So it's not just like a bonus. We need to be discipling our children to be given to hospitality so they know how to do this, right? So that when they grow up and leave our home, they know how to have people, not just have people over, but also approach people, be welcoming to people. And so it just needs to be part of our discipleship.
I think I'm introverted. I have a sister and a younger brother, and my younger brother. I mean, he is about as extroverted as you can get.
He's not introverted.
And it takes some energy for me to push myself out there, but I do it, and I get used to doing it, and it's okay. Now, I think there are, some people that will interact with 3 to 4 people on a Sunday morning. Others are interacting with 30 to 40 people on a Sunday morning in the church service.
Or some are interacting with one.
Yeah.
And one person just quite quietly approaches somebody who appears to be a little bit downtrodden, and they sit next, put an arm around, and pray with, and that's fine. The point is, some people will express their love and concern for others in certain ways, and I think we should allow for some of those differences, but it doesn't give us an excuse to say, our family is just introverted, and we're not going to have anybody over. We're not going to hospitalize anybody. That's my verb form for hospitality. We're not going to interact with anybody after the church service. We're going to go straight back into the van, leave the church, and not really greet anybody. That's the kind of family we're going to be. That's not the one another's that's presented to us. What are there, 35, 40 one another's in the New Testament? We're to love one another, exhort one another, encourage one another, et cetera. That's a command. We need to be doing this.
Absolutely.
It's something that comes from selfishness or a reticence to interact can come from selfishness. That's something that I've had to acknowledge in my own heart on a Sunday morning. Am I the guy that wants to go hang out with my friend group, or am I willing to go and interact with people that might be a little less in the cool group? And something that I had a great example in, particularly in my mom. She was just the kind of person that was always looking for the down and outer, and made herself available. She was, not intimidating. People would come and talk to her. She would listen to them. They would have, long conversations. So I appreciate that example about my mom, and that's something I want to grow in.
Amen.
My wife is the same way. She's more extroverted than me. I tend to be a little more helicopter-ish. I'll give you 10 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. That's bonus. That'll cost you an extra $100. But my wife will sit down there for 2-3 hours and just have a long time conversation and prayer with. And that's something I've had to grow into. Now, parents are the examples. And that's one conclusion I think we arrived on outside of the broadcast. We have to exemplify this.
Yes.
Shy, introverted parents that refuse to engage with others in the church, in the neighborhood, whatever, probably are going to give birth to and raise up shy, introverted kids that are not going to respond. More is caught than taught on that.
Yes, and also very extroverted, dominating parents on the other end of the spectrum
I see that.
can tend to raise those kinds of children as well. I've noticed situations in which the dad has this massive personality and he dominates conversation, and anytime his kids are around him, they do not have a chance to get a word in edgewise.
That's right.
That actually can have the very same effect.
Todd, how do you exemplify? I mean, how do you train your kids on this?
Well, I think we did treat it like something we would intentionally disciple in. So we would do, various things.
Drills?
It starts when they're young by the simple be able to walk up to people, because there's always going to be that real young in a young child, the nervousness to walk up to someone, unless maybe they're extremely extroverted. But to walk up to someone, look at them in the eye, shake their hand, be able to talk to them, engage, ask good questions. As they grow up, they should increase and be able to ask good questions. We would even do things like, when my girls were 8, 9, and 10 years old, I'd go to a nice hotel, and I'd say, okay, go inside and talk to the front counter, and you ask them these questions and then come back out. And of course, the people at the hotel thought, what in the world's going on here? But it's good to be able to talk to strangers, to be welcoming to strangers, or to be helpful in that way. So do various things. I think the other aspect in terms of the parent that maybe is, that finds themselves that way, or could be domineering in the conversation. I think bring your children in when you as a parent are talking to other people. Encourage your, hey, son, daughter, what do you think? Or what do you have to say? Or do you have any questions for Mr. Smith? And engage them. We actually found that can happen real well in terms of children are a little more relaxed at the dinner table. If you have people over, I would tell my children, the Smith family is coming over. Each of you should think of a question or two you can ask Mr. Smith at the dinner table. And there's just an easy way, and some of them very nervous, to ask those questions, but it was good. It was a little opportunity to break through that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might even have to feed them the question in real time, but just the practice of them looking that person in the eye and articulating the question, eventually they catch on to it.
Yes.
My dad would do those same kind of weird things. We were in a hardware store one time, and I was probably 7, and he says, I want you to go ask the manager where this certain part is that we're looking for. And I went up to the manager, and he just completely brushed me off, just completely ignored me. And I went back very wounded to my dad. And Dad said, well, let's go talk to the manager. And he marched me over to the manager, and he said, sir, I'm teaching my son how to interact with adults. Can you please answer his question?
Yeah. Right. You got to do that sometimes. Yeah.
Hospitality is a big part of this.
Yes.
And I think the opportunity to bring in missionaries or bring in folks from other countries into the house, and folks from different ethnic backgrounds and such, helpful. Also, inviting families over from the neighborhood.
Yes.
That don't know Jesus.
That's big. Yeah, that's very helpful.
It's a challenge, it's a stretch for us, but it's a good thing to do, and I think our children witness that sort of thing, and they will do the same thing with their families. And so I think that's the goal. Isn't that the goal?
And one of the nice things about having strangers in your home is you can coach your children ahead of time and say, hey, this family's coming over. They have kids that are going to need to be welcomed. And I want you're going to be their tour guides for the next 3 hours this afternoon.
Yes, exactly.
Show them the toys, show them the different play things.
Yeah.
And it's your job to make sure that they have a really good time. And oftentimes that interaction with children that they don't know as well tends to be more healthy and less cliquish, because they're having to get outside of themselves.
Yes.
And to break out of those cliques, as you mentioned earlier, it's easy to maintain your clique within the church community or within the homeschool community or whatever. But somehow we've got to get beyond that. Somehow we've got to get beyond that clique. And I think this balance we get from Hebrews 13 is important, because what we get is love the brothers, love the strangers. So it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And so challenging our children on a Sunday morning to just, let's edify, let's get conversations going with somebody you know and somebody you don't know. Let's balance that out a little bit as we interact with the church community.
Yeah, and it can get really exciting. First of all, if you go to church and a missionary comes, be the first to go, we want to have you over. Like, we get you, we want you, because it's such a great opportunity for this, to obviously for your children. Wow, here we have somebody that, is in missions or in ministry, and we can grow. It could be somebody in local ministry. It could be any of that. So all those opportunities are wonderful.
Let's talk about isolation just for a moment. You brought that up, I think, in a recent program, but let's drill into that a little bit more. Homeschoolers can isolate themselves. Anybody can isolate themselves. In fact, I think the modern age is more isolating than any other age we've lived in the extent of human history, because, well, you've got isolating forms of media. People are just, they've got their earphones. The guy named Koss, who developed the first earphones in 1952, whatever it was, introduced this idea of isolating ourselves in our hermetically sealed existence, especially in terms of music and entertainment. So you've got these homeschool kids. You've got public school kids, and they sit there in restaurants with their phones, and they're connected with their phones. They're not really interacting at all with anybody anymore. How do we break out of that isolation, or how do we sense? I guess one of the bigger questions is, how do we sense when we are ourselves somewhat isolating ourselves from other families and from the church community? It's not healthy. But how do we sense that? How do we deal with that?
Well, one of the things I was thinking about is just the importance of coming alongside your kids in this area and coaching them with the right perspective. For myself, I find that, I want my kids to be well respected and I want them to look good. And so that can be a sinful motivation that comes into this. Or if I get embarrassed if they don't look people in the eye. But thinking a little bit more broadly, what does God want for my children, and how does he want to use them in his kingdom? And then how can I communicate that vision? Children, we are people who love others. Jesus, as we said, has come from heaven to love us, to bring his truth to us. That's exactly what we're here for. This is the Great Commission that he's given us. So that's the vision. And not only that, children, but man, the way you communicate is going to be so important for your success in life.
Yes.
If you walk with the wise, you will be wise. And so communicating that positive, big picture vision of how being others focused glorifies God, and how it will be a blessing to their own life. And then being close enough with them. And I think this gets to your question, bringing them alongside us in our relating to others, such that we can coach them. Hey, I noticed this. When you look at them that way, you know what it communicates to them? No. Well, it actually communicates disinterest. Is that what you wanted to communicate? No. Here's what that would look like to do that differently.
Okay. Yeah. We've done programs on the family economy, the family kind of household, and that can take a variety of forms, but those are great too, because you're probably going to bump into and interact with different people, and typically you're there or in proximity to your children. So those can be great opportunities. I think that's probably how my children learn the most is, through little business adventures or hospitality, or, just different sort of, here's the family doing things together, because you can be right there and you can coach, like you're saying, in that way, or let's do that a little bit differently next time, and reveal that. That's been really helpful.
Interacting with people in the marketplace.
Yes.
Huge. That lemonade stand, where for this time, they have to interact with 27 customers.
Right.
For the very first time. That's huge.
It is.
And I think 1 Corinthians 5 actually speaks of how we interact with the world in this terms of this buying and selling, where we have some interaction with the world. And the area in which we have the most interaction with the world turns out to be in the area of business.
Yeah.
I think that's true for anybody,
Probably.
practically. So let's get our kids involved in some level of business. That's helpful as well.
Yeah.
But I think the point that you made, Danny, is very, very important, and that is that isolation is self-centeredness.
Yeah.
Isolation is self-worship. Isolation is concern for self and for escape, and for escaping God's reality, escaping God, escaping God's reality of the other people, escaping family, escaping into our own sort of metaphoric utopia of a pretend world. And we don't want that. We want them to come back into the real world, in which, we have a relationship with the true and living God through the Lord Jesus Christ, who came to be God with us, Emmanuel, and rebuild that relationship, restore that relationship that was lost at the fall. At the end of the day, it was Adam and Eve that sinned against God, broke relationship. Then Cain killed his brother. Very, very unsocialized approach to life, and then becomes the vagabond, isolating himself in the wilderness east of Eden. So that's the sort of thing we have. We we break through by the peacemaking work of the Lord Jesus Christ. He is our peace. So bringing back relationship in the home is so very, very key. And I do think the homeschool can be an isolating form, but it can also be a tremendous form of restoring relationship and then cultivating more relationships outside of the family. Can we just talk for just a moment of our children getting out of the age focused form of relationship, the peer related thing? That tends to be where they gravitate because it's easy, right?
Yeah.
They're probably not going to interact with adults. I mean, that's by nature. Kids probably aren't going to do that. Homeschool kids are probably a little bit more likely. It's interesting. My son, even at 5, 6 years of age, was actually more interested in sitting down with the 38-year-olds and the 62-year-olds in the congregation than he was with kids his own age. I think that's partially because, he was with us as much as he was. But our children really do need to be able to interact with adults. How does that happen? How do we train them to that, Todd?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be intentional about it. They're not just going to fall into this. You have to take it and teach it and provide those opportunities to do that with them, to show them how to do that. We would do a lot of practice at home, just in our family, and then go out forward and do that. And I think one of the aspects that you're referring to is we don't want to think, well, the world's it's so bad, and there is a lot of bad and evil in the world, that we're just going to be real insular and kind of stay in our homeschooling church bubble. And that's good. I mean, we need to minister to the house of God as well, but to get outside of that is what I think really where some of this instruction's going to happen, particularly as the children get a little bit older, and they're going to realize this person's not a Christian. Like, they're going to have a different worldview, but I still need to figure out how to interact with them. And that gets actually pretty, I love that. It's real exciting to be able to teach, like, kind of the teenage years. Like, do you see how he kind of views everything differently, the guy behind the counter? And so okay, we know that. How can we talk to him? How can we encourage him? How can we bring light into this situation? It gets really fun to be able to do that together.
Yeah. I would recommend people avoid age segregated classrooms and age segregated Sunday schools. I mean, I just think as a manner of life, the first thing that parents need to do today is to avoid age segregation in classrooms and to integrate more so in the church, integrate more so in terms of school, business. Business is an excellent way because kids get out there into the business world. You're not just selling lemonade to 4-year-olds or 8-year-olds or 12-year-olds. You're selling lemonade to anybody who happens to show up. So somehow we have to find ways to do this and to do it in the context of hospitality as well.
Yeah, and the thing about what we're talking about is that the reason it's difficult for the children to get outside their peer group and talk with adults is they have to cross a cultural boundary.
Exactly. Takes some effort.
And so that's kind of the bigger issue here.
Yeah.
And as I think about the different things Mom and Dad did with us, they took us to nursing homes. That was crossing a cultural boundary.
That's an age leap of sorts.
They took us to Russia. That was crossing a cultural boundary.
Sure it was.
So think about that is actually where are the areas in our lives where we could find people that are different than us and go show them the love of Christ.
Yeah.
The other thing that has been encouraged in our church, I think I've done some encouragement here, you've done some encouragement on this, Todd, as well, is to be sure that the adult men are reaching out to the young men in the congregation. I've had recently some great conversations with Josiah, your son, Josiah. I just he's fun to talk to. Sat down at his table, just interacted with him. So it's a both and. If we have a culture like that, we need to cultivate cultures like that within the church communities. We've been doing that recently. I think it's been helpful.
Yeah, I mean, the young people need to reach. I tell my children often. I don't know how often, but find someone older to talk to.
Absolutely.
And then you could. The word is so clear. They have wisdom. They have more wisdom than you. Go get wisdom. And it's going to be by talking to the older people. And the older people, we need to reach to that too. I particularly more recently though have have put that a little bit more on the young people.
Well, they need to.
Don't wait around in the corner for an older person to come to you. You need to take the step of faith and reach out and say, Mr. So-and-so, I'd like to talk to you. Or, hey, Mr. So-and-so, I'd like to grab coffee with you. That kind of thing. We really want to see that in the young people.
And where I see 4 to 5 young men sitting at a table during the fellowship meal, I bust in.
Yeah.
I bust in.
That's a good time to do that.
Bust into it.
Right.
All of us, let's do this.
Yeah.
We're not just doing this peer thing.
Right.
We want some interaction, all directions.
That's right.
Cross age contact.
Yep.
You were going to say.
You said the word faith, and that resonated with me. This is an act of faith. It's an act of love, but it's an act of faith. I'm going to go talk to someone I haven't met before. Right. But with the help of Jesus, I can do this.
Let's go.
And the other thing, very practically, that I think we can do to help our kids in this is teach them to ask questions. This is
so important.
I think this is the fundamental sort of the skill
big
that
skill.
helps you cross these boundaries. My dad was such a master at this. And as I watched my dad interact with others, he actually did very little talking about himself.
Right.
Whenever he was in conversation with adults, they were almost always doing the talking, and he was almost always the one asking the questions. Man, if we can exemplify that aspect and teach our kids to think of good questions on the fly. I like to teach, 5 basic questions for young people. Number 1, can you tell me about your successes in life? Like, what do people like to talk about their success? If you had it to do over again, what would you do differently? As a young man, what advice would you have for me? What encouragement would you have for me? And if you run out of questions, my favorite catch-all question is, can you just tell me more about that? So if you can teach your kids, I think those 4 questions, then they're going to do well.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
And I would recommend the course that you put together, Kickstart, as part of our offerings, because to get to the point that our young people have a decent mentorship, and it's not just mom and dad, it gets beyond that, right? We get into the older women teaching younger women, older men teaching younger men in the church, Titus 2. And we want to see more of that. And so that's why Kickstart, highly recommended. Anything else, brothers, as we just encourage our kids. And the bottom line here is teach them to love. Teach them to love. Teach the 4-year-old, the 5-year-old, hey, we don't respond that way. We say, I'm sorry when we, offend one another in this way. We're polite. We're mannerly. Manners is a big part of this. We walk them through these things and get them to habituate reaching out to others, but primarily because we're concerned for the betterment and for the edification of others. That's it. We're wanting to feed into the lives of others. We want others to feel encouraged after our interaction with them in the home, in the church, in the workplace. Have we been a positive influence upon others on any given day? And that's for us as much as it is for the kids. Yeah.
The world talks a lot about emotional intelligence, and the studies definitely show a high correlation between emotional intelligence and worldly success. And I think if we think through that from a biblical perspective, it's an awareness of others and an interest in others.
Yeah.
Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out. Who's around me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who is God bringing into my orbit right now? Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others.
That's it. That's it, Todd.
That's the key. And I think, again, we need to be thoughtful about this. If you're a dad out there listening, the first place to start is the Word. What does the Word say about the one another's? About this, about loving others, about hospitality, about welcoming others. And then, talk to your wife about it and think together, how can we create this culture in our family that does love others? And we're going to actually become good at it and skilled at it for the glory of Christ in faith, so that we can step forward and do this. And it's part of his kingdom work. I mean, he's providentially putting people in our lives. It's not just random and accidental. He would have us to go talk to them. So we need to do that.
So, folks, when people ask you, you're homeschooling, what about socialization? Say, that's another reason. Thank you for bringing that up. That's key. That's core. That's what we're all about. That's the most important subject that we teach in our homeschool program. I think we'll close it there. The greatest of these is love.
Yeah, amen.
It's to love others. Absolutely. Relationship, socialization, and love, and preferring others, and all the things that we've learned. Of course, the gifts of the Spirit, the graces of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and temperance, as we interact in the home, in the church, in the community. That wraps up this edition of Generations. And friends, if you have any questions, if you have anything to add to this discussion, please email us at mail@generations.org, because we want to keep this conversation going. This has been edifying for us, and I'm sure for others out there as well. It's mail@generations.org for that. This is Kevin Swanson as well, Todd Strasser and Danny Craig, inviting you back again next time as we continue to lay down a vision for the next generation. This has been a production of the Generations Media Network. For more information, go to generations.org/media.